Well, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening. My name is Michael Hilkemeyer from ICTE Solutions Australia, and it is my great pleasure and privilege to introduce to you Craig Kemp, the founder of Ignite EdTech. Welcome, Craig. It's, like I said, a real pleasure to meet you. And I believe you've got a presentation for us to go through today. To start off with, I'll just go through it and I'll read a little bit of your profile from your website, and I've also included this link to your profile in the chat area for anyone who would like to read more about you and about what Ignite EdTech can do for themselves as well. So it says that as a well-known and respected keynote speaker, workshop host, global education consultant, he is a leader in the field of ICT and EdTech and works with departments, ministries, school leadership, school communities, and educators to understand, design, and implement digital learning solutions and transformations to improve teaching practice and student learning outcomes. He has supported schools and organizations all over the globe to establish practices, protocols, and guidelines to support the sustainable implementation of technology into the curriculum to add value to student learning. In addition, he works as an advisor with technology vendors, adding value to their products for use in the schools. He also works with these companies to help them build, develop, grow, and connect with schools all over the world, and has successfully supported global EdTech companies in developing a presence in APAC. It's really a fantastic pleasure, Craig. And like I said, I've provided a full link to your profile for anyone who wishes to learn more about you and what Ignite EdTech can do. I'm happy to give you the reins and to talk more about yourself and your presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Michael. I really appreciate the introduction, the kind words, and passing it over. I'm excited to be here today. I'm excited to share. It's what I love to do. I love to connect. I love to share. I love to be involved in conversations about authentic and purposeful ways of integrating technology, especially now in this post-COVID world that we're still grappling with, still trying to understand. So what I'm going to do is I've put together a little bit of a brief sort of overview and presentation that I wanted to run through. So let me start here and share through a few slides, and I'm going to skip over a couple of things that aren't super relevant initially, but I wanted to start with, and I can share a couple of videos for you to throw out to the community as well, but let me start by telling you who I am, because a guy with a thick New Zealand accent is sitting in front of you speaking and sharing, and for some of you, you probably have no idea who I am and what I do. So I've been in education my whole life. I'm originally from New Zealand, as you can tell, and I have an extreme passion for the way technology can be used to ignite and inspire learners to create, to make, and to learn. I got into education immediately following my high school. I went straight to Teachers Training College. It was a stab in the dark. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but what I did know is why I wanted to do it. I was involved a lot in sports at a young age and coaching, and I loved seeing and supporting the kids that I worked with in their growth and development on the sports field. And I wanted to be able to then continue that because it brought a lot of pleasure to me. And I really wanted to continue that. And it was an obvious pathway for me to go down. So, post training in New Zealand, I got a job, very lucky to get a job. I was living in Dunedin at the time, at the bottom of the South Island. And I worked in an amazing little primary school. As a primary trained teacher, I worked there for almost 8 years, actually, as both from a grade 3 all the way to a grade 6 teacher. I was assistant principal. We helped roll out one of the first one-to-one iPad programs for our grade 6 kids when iPads were released many, many years ago now. But one of the first iPad programs in New Zealand at the time. We didn't really know what we were doing, but we knew it would add a heck of a lot of value to that. Fast forward, I moved to Singapore for an opportunity to work in an international school. My wife and I thought it would be good for us to get out about and explore pre-kids, and we thought we'd be here for a couple of years. Fast forward, 11 years later, we're still here with 2 beautiful children who are both 4 and one's 4 and one's 8 now. And I've had all the opportunities in the world, which has been super exciting. Being in this international world has provided me more opportunities than I could have ever imagined. I worked in 2 different international schools here, a small Australian curriculum school, coming in with no experience of the Australian curriculum, no experience of international education. I was trusted and led some classrooms and leadership roles, moved into some tech roles in that school. 4 years on from that, I got a role as a tech director at a large 3,500 student American international school here. And my job was to work with a team of coaches to support the authentic and purposeful integration of technology across our large school, which spanned across 2 campuses, more than 400 staff, 3,500 learners and their families. So in that, I learned a lot about rollouts, development, ecosystems, tech partners, EdTech companies who were constantly knocking on our door, and everything in between. And I did a lot of consultancy during that time. So I actually came to Australia a lot, did a lot of work in Melbourne and Sydney with both public and private schools, supporting tech integration and professional learning. And that really sparked my passion for professional learning and development. My choice of PLN or professional learning network is Twitter. And I just put the number down the bottom there because that's important and valuable for me, is that I built my own PLN. This is where I decided to do my learning and connect with passionate educators from all over the world. And as a result of that, building that community, that trust, that network, I'm connected to more than 47,000 educators from all over the world inside of that space. And I use it every day to connect, to learn, and to share, and continue to do that today. And fast forward again, I left my school 4 years ago now, started my own consultancy company, and started sharing that love and that passion to schools all over the world. Pre-COVID, I was in 12 different countries, working with more than 20 different schools, supporting their rollout of technology and innovation, professional learning, strategy for implementation, EdTech audits, and so much more. And we'll go into a little bit of that today, but I love it, and I still love it. My most recent project is eduspark.world, and I'm sure Michael will share the link in there as well. It's a professional learning platform for educators that redefines professional learning and takes professional learning to the next level. So it's not a one and done sit and get platform with thousands and thousands of courses that you sit, you click through, get a certificate, and you walk away. We're trying to redefine that space, bring in synchronous, asynchronous, communities of practice, live video, all sorts. And I'll share a little bit about that at the end. But today, really what I wanted to jump into is technology, and the culture, and how culture eats strategy for breakfast, in my opinion. And how, as schools, we need to be better at building a culture of how and why technology supports what we do, and embrace that and work with providers to support you in your growth and development. So let's touch into a few points first. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is, where is EdTech at now, thanks to our good friend COVID and the interruptions to learning and learning loss and all of these things that are being thrown around? What does it mean for us, especially in this EdTech space? So the first thing is that these are my findings. This is what I noticed during this period. This is what I have seen. This is what I'm noticing now. The first thing was that we adapted to change incredibly well. We had no plans in place for most of us. We had no strategy in place. some of us had no technology in place. And a good example of that is here in Singapore. The Singapore government shut down schools, and a week prior had a massive panic attack and said, how are our kids going to connect? Some of our kids don't have access to devices. Our teachers haven't been trained on how to do things. What do we do? And at that point, they had a 7-year plan in place. And that 7-year plan was to roll out devices to every student in secondary school from the age of 11 up. Every student would have a device over a 7-year period. So through to about 2027, 2026, 2027. And immediately they said, whoa, this is not okay. We can't do this. We have to adapt and change now. So what they did is they actually condensed their 7-year plan into a 1-year plan. And within the first period of lockdown, and then when we opened up again before we went into a second period of lockdown here, every student had a device, every school had a strategy, every school had a voice and choice in the devices that they offered to their community. They had a choice in whether they were going to be BYOD or a one-to-one tech-owned school, where they'd lease it out. Complete autonomy on that. And what they didn't do well was professional learning. It takes a long time to set up, to train people, to support people. But what they did in such a short amount of time is something that the rest of the world should have seen and should still look at as a case study of implementation of technology at scale. And when I think about that, I think, wow, like it was an incredible achievement. There could have been things done better, but that's the case with everything. But what they did was roll out to tens of thousands of students, if not hundreds of thousands of students, devices, a strategy, and a plan of attack in a very, very short amount of time. And that's no easy feat, particularly with ecosystems and infrastructure in schools and all sorts of other bits and pieces going on as well. So, not only did we adapt well as teachers to learn, develop, to take on things, we adapted as schools and we adapted as nations. We all had mixed views on remote teaching. And I think that's okay. It's okay to have mixed views. Would have come across teachers that would have pushed back on it. Some people would have loved it. Some kids would have loved it. Some parents would have hated it. It was a real mixed mindset, but I think what we helped to do was shift teachers' mindsets. We shifted teachers' mindsets, and more importantly, we shifted parents' mindsets. And our parents now understand just how hard we work because they had to teach their kids. They had their kids in their home for a long time. And I take that last comment back because they didn't teach their kids. They supported their kids. They helped their students in their learning while we did the teaching in a different way. They had to be there to support, to guide, to interact, to engage because we couldn't be there physically. But I think parents understood then the real value that teachers add and that we don't work 9 till 3 jobs, that we really do push boundaries in many ways. As a result of COVID, budgets dropped, priorities adapted. Luckily, priorities adapted towards technology. PD options grew. We were throwing a whole bunch of tech tools by companies trying to get them in. The intention of that was from the outside to support us as teachers. The underlying underbelly of that was, let's get them using our products so they'll pay for it post-COVID. Right. And now we're in this position of too many tech tools, too many things going on, too many student-facing products. We have to stop and focus on strategy now. We have to go back and think about what works and what doesn't work and how can we refine and reduce the tech stack that we have in our schools. And with that, we sort of moved into the space of, I identified, 3 different types of people I interacted with during COVID. And I'm sure people listening will identify with this as well. Had the small portion of people that thrived, those that just clung on and survived, and those that gave up, said, that's enough. I'm done. I'm at the end of my career. I'm at the start of my career, or whatever it might be. This is not for me. I don't want to spend my time doing this. This is not what I trained for. And that's fine. And it's okay to do that. In actual fact, for many schools that I work with now, it was a good thing because it got rid of the people that, I say are laggards in schools, the people that hold change from occurring. It helped us move beyond those people, the people that say, no, thanks, we're too busy. The people that say, I'm not interested in innovation or change because I've done this for so many years and it works. Look at my scores, look at my ATAR results, look at my, whatever it might be. That's one of the things that's the biggest problem of schools. This is the way I've always done things. And I think it comes back to this diffusion of innovation model. And it's a model that's not new and not specific to technology. In fact, it was created in the 1960s. And it's a model that demonstrates and shows how people adapt and change to new innovations, whether it's tech innovations or new strategies or a new reading program or whatever it might be. And this is very true. And if you're watching this, you'll see in your head these people. I'll talk about each part of this and you'll identify those people immediately that you work with currently or you've worked with in the past. Every school has them. And every school has every part of this. And if you don't, then I want to come and work with you because I've never seen a school that don't have these people inside of them. And the first group of people, and the most important people to talk about here, are our laggards. Laggards are people that say no. They're people that push back. They're people that, almost turn a negative idea into something that's pushed against you. I think we should bring in one-to-one devices in our school, and this is why. No, we've been doing it this way for so many years. Why should we change? Why should we move? This is the way I've done things. We're successful. Laggards find ways to push back on you and make you feel negative about your decision. And it almost always results in people stepping back. My first piece of advice to any school looking to change and adapt is always focus no time on these people initially. Our brains as educators and our minds as leaders in schools is always, we need to help these people the most. Actually, you don't. You don't need to help these people the most because you're going to invest 10% of your time in these people and they're going to zap 90% of your energy. It's not worth the time invested. Leave them to start with. You've got all of these people that want to change. You've got these innovators, your leaders, your early adopters who are interested in wanting to do things. Invest your first time in them. They're the ones that are going to pick things up. They're the ones that are going to lead it, and they will influence the early majority. That's a huge chunk of your faculty. 1/3 of your faculty or teachers will move if they see like for like, if they see what I call the teacher next door model. If they see a teacher next door doing it, they're going to want to do it. If they see a teacher next door doing it, they'll believe that they can do it. And it's the early majority that we should focus the most of our time and energy in because they're the people that'll move. They're the people that'll move the late majority. And as we move down this, and you can see this flow of learning here, that the late majority will then influence the laggards. And the laggards will make one of two decisions. They'll jump on board or they'll jump off. And either way, it's a good thing. And we have to remember that some people will leave your school through times of change. Some people will fight back against you in times of change. But if we didn't have that, we wouldn't know we're doing things right. And I think that pressure, that challenge, that almost pushback is what drives us to be successful because we have more opportunities to work with a more diverse group of people. And this is something I work with my work with schools as we build out strategy and learning spaces and even audits, which we'll talk about later. And the question that school leaders often ask is, how do we move these people? How do we change mindsets? And this is a very basic model of what I do with schools when I'm in there, supporting them in the strategy and growth. We work through these elements that is cyclical. It doesn't just get results and it stops. It continues through. And every school is different. And, you might get results and then that might lead up to PD or it might lead to sharing or it might lead to building a plan. But the basic flow is you build a team of your innovators and your early adopters, and they help drive this. It's not a single top-down person demanding change. It's a team effort. We build a plan together with all staff. We lead PD, but that PD is led by teachers for teachers. Yes, bring in experts. No, fly people in. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars to fly people in from all over the world who are experts. We've learned from COVID that we can utilize this hybrid model, and I'll talk about that later. But utilize that model. If you need to bring people in, bring them in. But utilize a hybrid model. Utilize your expertise in-house, and then share, and co-teach. Build in systems, build in learning opportunities to have things like techie brekkies, where teachers share their favorite thing of the week, or conferencing where you walk around and you do a walking learning session where you walk from class to class and you see things in action. Because at the end of the day, technology is important, but it's not the answer. It's not going to save us and change the way that education is. The human part of learning is the most important part, because unfortunately, in too many of our schools, too much tech leads to stress. Because it's new, because it's a change, because we don't invest in professional learning as much as we should, we end up building poor strategy, which leads to poor implementation. And, unfortunately, people think more tech is better. Let's implement a one-to-one device program. Here's a piece of technology, go and make things happen. It doesn't work that way. You must build a culture where people want to change. You can then build a strategy to support that learning, and then you implement technology. We have to be context specific because every school is unique. And I think that one of the most important things is teachers always say, I need more time. We need time to do it. We need time in our schedule. We don't want more added on our plate. So how can we do that? We can be strategic with our time and our investment to really choose the right tools for the right purpose. And moving through this post-COVID action plan, and this is a very brief overview of some of the work I do in action planning with schools and strategy development, but it starts with knowing your why. And Simon Sinek says this very well. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And if we can't justify why we're using technology, we can't identify problems areas to find solutions. We can't, identify professional learning and where we need to build capacity. And we work through this, and I'm happy to share with anyone interested. You can reach out and I can share more and connect and engage. But co-creating these strategic plans is really important. And also having people from outside of those silos of schools is also really important. And I'll go into that a little bit in a moment too. But one quick little learning activity that I often do when I work with schools, and then I work with students in schools. And often when I come in, I like to interact and engage with kids to get a feel of an understanding of where they're at and what it looks like. And this is an activity I used to do in my old schools as well. And it was it originally started as part of a learning experience where we took our primary school kids to middle school or to high school, sort of grade 6 going to middle school or high school and secondary school, and introducing them to the change in schedule. You're going to have multiple teachers. You're going to have a device to carry around with you that's owned by you. You're going to be, interacting and engaging. There's so much change. And I used to bring these discs in, and I'd throw them on the table and I'd say to the kids, what's this? This is how we'd kick things off in an inquiry sort of model. What's this? They'd have discussions. There'd always be that one kid that knows everything that's trying to throw their hand up and tell you, and in this case, this first one, there's this girl who I knew was going to throw her hand up straight away. Always a know-it-all, always thought she knew everything. And, as a teacher, a pretty experienced teacher at this stage, part of me is like, I love that she's so passionate and wants to share, but part of me is like, I need to bring this girl down. I need to put her back in her place and provide opportunities for others. And And so I thought, right, I know she doesn't know this. These kids have no idea what this is. And she tried to influence everyone else, right? She said, I know what it is. This is what it is. So go for it. Tell me. And with the most confidence in the world, she stood up and she said, Mr. Kemp, this is so simple. This is a 3D printed version of the save icon. And she was adamant that I'd gone to our 3D printer, and we were lucky, we had 3D printers, and I'd 3D printed a save icon for some reason, no context of technology past, right? And it was a really interesting conversation. And I encourage you to do this as well, if you can get your hands on these things. But it's a really interesting conversation, because then we started talking about, what is this? This disc the size of my face, or a kid's face, we'd used to put those in our computers, and that's where I'd save my documents that I was working on, or my game, or whatever it might be. And then we'd go into things like, look at the size of it, look at the size of it's bigger than my phone, and I can do all these things on my phone now. So it led us to, what did phones look like back then? And, what do storage devices look like now? And do we store things on this? Or, so it talked about cloud storage. And, we looked at this, 1.44 megabytes. This disk held 1.44 megabytes of data. And now the photo I take on my phone, one photo wouldn't fit on this disk. So we talk about change and how fast things change and the intensity of those changes. So it was a really cool learning experience to get kids talking and thinking. And then we move into this conversation of creation over consumption, because, this model is something that I talk about with teachers and with schools, because I believe that we need to be more focused on creation with technology than consumption with technology. We used to focus on consumption, use technology to help you learn, use a math program to help you get better at mathematics. But actually, we're moving into this world now where we need to create. Kids need creation, problem-solving skills. So the tech tools we implement have to, for the majority, be creation-based. Yes, there's a space for consumption. My daughter currently is 8 and she's learning her times tables. And, there is still a space for rote learning. And I believe that, I believe that there still is a space for certain different ways of learning depending on, the learners. And I still think there's a space for non-tech things as well, by the way, don't get me wrong. But, these images, by the way, come from Apple Education. Every learner is a creator. That's true in our schools. And, a learner isn't necessarily a child. Every person in our school community are learners. And that's a culture that we need to build, particularly with our parents, that we as teachers design those conditions to create. And I think Seymour Papert says it really well. It says, the role of the teacher is to create the conditions for invention rather than to provide ready-made knowledge. And unfortunately, a lot of us are still stuck in that world of printing worksheets and giving activities and, following up things that, and our kids need to learn in different ways for the world that they're going into, because the world that they're going into is diverse and different than it was before. And this piece of data to me is critical. This is one of my favorite pieces of data, and it comes from the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report. This is their latest report that was released in December of 2020, right in the heart of COVID. And, the data that comes into this is actually pre-COVID, and they're due, I think, in the next couple of months to release a new report, which is going to be very different to see how COVID has affected this. But even pre-COVID, we look at this, 50% of the skills our kids need to be successful in 2025 are problem-solving skills. And I do this activity with teachers, and I say to them, and you can do this now, on a rating, I call it a fist to 5 scale. From a fist to 5 scale, fist being 0, 5 being all of them, how many of these do you explicitly teach to your kids? How many explicitly teach? Not just we incorporate them or we talk about them, but do you teach critical thinking? Do you teach problem-solving strategies? Do you teach kids how to ideate, to reason, to be a leader, to use technology? Or do we just expect these things to happen? And most teachers, and I don't know what you came up with, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, most teachers say 2 or 3, at the most 2 or 3. And the reason for that is our schools haven't adapted to what our kids need for the future. And technology can play a massive role in supporting that if we do it right. And I encourage you to go take a look at this as well. Search Future of Jobs report, World Economic Forum. It comes from tens of thousands of research studies. This is a tiny piece of a 300-page report. So I encourage you to go and check it out and find more details into that. And I wanted to just very quickly go over a few more pieces of research and studies too, because I think it's really important. And this comes from, my frustration as a tech leader in a school, assistant principal, all of those things, consultant, where parents always say, my kid is on their device too much, help me. Or a teacher says, too much screen time, that's why I'm not using technology. My kids are going to get addicted to it. My learners are going to hurt their eyes. And so I always throw this research back at them. And there's another piece of research I'll share as well. It's okay to think like that, but the reality is that our kids make up the majority of internet users globally. The focus or the key out of this research study was that we need to focus more on what kids are doing and less on how long they're spending on devices. Because in this age of TikTok, Instagram, quick, easy things to jump into, it is easier now more than ever to get into the wrong things online. So if we don't have a strong digital citizenship program that supports kids in their learning journeys, then we're doing a disservice to them, because 98% of our households, rich or poor, have access to mobile devices. And that is true even in countries, even here in Asia. I've been to countries in Asia and Africa where I could go into a community and learn and engage, and it's part of my passion as a parent, as a traveler, that we go into local communities rather than going on the beaten track with other tourists. We like to go and dive deep into the real part of those countries, and we often go to villages and find our way in to live and learn with locals. And one of the things that springs to my mind is I went to Cambodia and we did a whole bunch of stuff, amazing country. But we went to this village and not an organized tour to a village, but just turned up and interacted with locals. And the first thing that sprung to my mind was when I went into one of their thatched hut houses, and we walked in. They didn't have a bed to sleep on. They didn't have really clothes, ways of cleaning, didn't wear shoes, didn't have access to amazing amounts of food or clean water. But they all had a mobile device, So priorities in this world have shifted as well. And it's something that we need to talk about in terms of how do we make a better impact. And this is a different conversation to go into, but there's lots of things for us to think about when it comes to access to learning. Not going to spend a heap of time on this, but I do love this. I'd encourage you to search for it. It's called This Is What Happens in an Internet Minute. And you can search back, Google search it, and you'll find all the way back to, 2000 or something like that. And how it's changed over time, and how, things like Twitter and have reduced, and things like TikTok have increased, and the world of Netflix, Snapchat. How do we, and I guess my question to you as an educator is, how do you embrace this change? How do you embrace this technology and integrate it into your classroom or your learning? Interesting one. Do you need to? Should you be doing it? A conversation to have in your school and with your faculty. And, a case study. I wanted to talk about my school, my old school, Stanford American International School here in Singapore, where I was the head of technology and innovation for many years. And it's a really good case study of the way schools could and should adapt to change. And there are a few outliers here. Yes, there was budget. Yes, there was willingness to change. So it helped us adapt and move quickly, but we still implemented a culture and a strategy to move people through. So one of the things we did was we were lucky to have this amazing innovation hub space where we were able to bring people together. And for a long time prior to me and my team arriving here, it was not used. You can see Skype as a label up there. It was actually sponsored by Skype and Microsoft and Bloomberg, and you can see Bloomberg on the windows there. And they didn't do things well. They took money from these companies to put up some stickers and to go, cool, we're going to have an innovation hub that's powered by companies. And the first thing I did was we broke contracts. We ripped those up. We lost a lot of money. But we said we don't want to be associated or affiliated with companies and products. We want to be a learning space that is innovative and is teacher and student focused, not just student focused, but teacher and community focused. So this is an example of a professional learning opportunity we brought in at the time, and this is 6 years ago now, but we brought in, we're talking about VR and actually Google Expeditions and supporting kids in their learning journey with Google Expeditions. And this is us running a learning session with our teachers, because we believe that for our teachers to fully understand and grasp concepts of learning, they should be involved as learners themselves. So this is us taking them through the learning journey. You can see them with their little Google cardboards and interacting with some exciting learning material. And then, this translates into the classroom. And this is not me leading a session. This is our teachers leading a session with Google Expedition. So taking their kids on a learning journey not because it's a cool tech stack, but because it fits into the learning journey. They're learning about oceans and the way that animals and humans interact with the oceans and what it means to us. So they took the kids in an undersea experience and looked underneath. And as a teacher, they could see where kids were looking and they could guide the learning experience. And so they used technology authentically and purposefully. And this learning experience was 5 minutes. And there was no other tech used. And it didn't need to be used because the learning experience was done. And it was engaging and it helped the inquiry process and it got people excited. And we took things to a different level. We partnered we then went back and we started partnering with companies, but we partnered with companies in different ways. We partnered with this company called Lightyear, who were a game development company, actually from the creators of Angry Birds. And they flew over from Finland and launched their new product with us because they had our kids support the beta versions of their product, give them feedback on things like characters, game development. And they used that feedback to develop the product. And they came into their global launch with us. And it was incredible. And those types of experiences, I think, are hugely valuable in schools. And tech companies need to be better at working with schools rather than trying to sell to schools. And on the right, these are our tech experts. We developed a tech program, a leadership program for students, and we decided to start with our grade 5 and 6 kids, our senior primary students, and we created a full application process as if they were job hunting. They had to apply to be a tech expert. We accepted 10 every year across those grades. We trained them. They got time out of class to come and learn new skills, to develop programs, to have a voice, to share to the board of directors. These are actually 2 members who own the schools. They're actually part of a group of 100 schools as part of this network of schools. And these 2 are actually super high profile leaders within that group. And our kids were teaching them how green screens work. And how they use them in their classroom. Incredible learning. These kids presented at a conference, EdTech Asia. Here, 500 people they spoke in front of about virtual reality and how it should be used in schools. Incredible to empower our kids to lead learning, because at the end of the day, they know more than we do. And thinking about that journey, we have to start somewhere and we have to go on a journey. This is the journey that we went on at school. Prior to our arrival, my arrival, they used to have ICT teachers that would come in and teach kids. The teacher then classroom teacher would have a free block and leave the classroom. And I can tell you now that I know lots of schools in Australia and New Zealand do this. And I can tell you now that it has to change. It has to change because it adds no value to the school's culture or strategy. because the people that need to be in the room to integrate technology leave the room, and it does not change practice. So what we did was we took that time away from teachers, and for the first 6 months, we were the most hated people in the school. We took free time away from a teacher. And what we did was we turned our ICT teachers into ICT coaches. And this was a slow transition, but we built a coaching model. We built trust. We gave them free breakfasts. We gave them candy. We gave them, time with us in professional learning out of the classroom and in the classroom. We came in and introduced robots with them. We co-taught. We built this idea of how do we support this transfer of knowledge, because it's not okay for us to be the bearers of all and push it down to people, because that's not the way learning happens. We need to build a community of practice where people wanted to be involved and wanted to learn. Then we established this vision, which was our quote, and this is different in every school, but our one was to possess a culture where everyone thrives in a constantly evolving landscape. And this had nothing to do with technology, even though it had everything to do with technology. But for us, it was important not to use the word technology in here as well. And then we shifted our focus sort of 18 months into that from a group that was focused on consumption and sharing and top-down knowledge investment to creation. And we built a model that worked for us. And this was our EdTech model. And it's changed and adapted now, because this is 5 years ago when we rolled this out. But using that high-level model, we identified 4 areas where us as coaches could support. And we changed the job title from EdTech, IT coach to EdTech coach, and then from EdTech coach to digital learning coach. And now they're actually learning coaches, I think, that also encompass literacy and numeracy. So it's kind of all encompassing now, which is really exciting. But I guess the 4 parts of this were: we provide curriculum support. How do you integrate it into your curriculum authentically and purposefully without adding more time? How do you utilize human resources, the people in our building, because we're short-staffed and limited? How do we develop your skill set and the skill set of our community? And then how do we empower our community to be involved in digital learning and technology? And what we did was we invested in people. We started with a team of 2. We moved to a team of 3 because we justified the impact we were having. We built to a team of 5 in 3 years. And that team of 5 then worked across our school to coach, to invest, to support, to develop, to grow, and to lead learning. And, we took this model of, the 5 of us in the middle, and we built out digital learning leaders. And we brought on classroom teachers from every grade. So K is like kindergarten, M is Mandarin, D is design, grade 1, 2, 3, 4. And we brought on learning leaders and these digital learning champions. Our digital learning champions were teachers who had a full load teaching, but they were passionate about leading learning. And so we wanted to impart our knowledge on them so we had greater reach and impact. So they got a small amount of time out of class to come to these initiatives, but they could apply. They weren't told they had to do it. These were the criteria. So this was essentially our role description. You have to be positive. Don't come to us if you're not going to be positive and cheerleaders. You have to be willing to learn. You have to be willing to collaborate. And at that stage, we were looking at implementing the ISTE standards as a way of showing and understanding that. And it's something you could look at, IST standards, which are a great set of globally recognized free international tech standards to support technology in schools. And so we did it. We rolled it out, and it was incredibly successful. And then they became champions in their grade level or in their teams, and they started leading learning. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't just us, it was a culture of change. Our early adopters were now innovators, and our late adopters were, starting to be practitioners and using it and leading it. And it was really exciting. And then we, and I know we've only got a few more minutes, but then we implemented, established some non-negotiables. We said to our teachers, for us to be successful, we have to create this bare minimum, this line that every teacher coming into our school needs to be at this bare minimum, because otherwise we're continuously teaching these things and we don't have time to innovate. So we said to our teachers, we must be Common Sense certified, which is part of our digital citizenship or digital learning, safety learning stuff that we did. And we became a Common Sense school. All 373 of our faculty, teaching faculty, were Common Sense certified educators, and still remain that today. We said to them, we're an Apple school, Apple teachers, that minimum expectation. All of our staff became Apple certified teachers. And actually one more, the year I left, we started implementing this. All of our teachers were Google certified educator level 1. So we set that minimum expectation. So as a teacher coming into our school, before you apply for a job, you must have these 3 things, which meant that by the time you came in, we don't have to teach you how to use an Apple device. We don't have to teach you how to use Google tools. You can just jump in and we can continue where we left off. So we've got that minimum level. And this is something that schools never do. And it's part of strategy, and it's part of that external support that companies should provide. And Dexter Yeager says, you'll never leave where you are until you decide where you'd rather be. And it's a really important part of that growth process. You know, I quoted Simon Sinek before, and he has this golden circle, you know, that starts with the why. And if you haven't read his book or books, I'd encourage you to do so. Search for him, jump into it. Some amazing learning there. Really quick, jump into some pedagogy. The SAMA model is a model that I always work with schools. You know, I know Ruben Putendera, who's the person that researched and founded this very well. I've worked with him for many years. An incredible leader of learning. He says this is not a ladder. We don't start at the bottom and work our way up. We identify ways of modifying and transforming learning, and that's where we go. You know, we don't just substitute from writing in a book to writing in a Google Doc. We think about how that Google Doc could have an add-on like Mote to redefine a learning experience and create a faster feedback loop, because we're in this mode of learning to unlearn. You know, how do we unlearn so we can relearn? And part of that is mistake making and taking risks and trying new things. And it's a skill that we have to embrace. But often we say, I don't have time to do that. You know, we can't move. And I'm a quote person. I love quotes to tie things together. And Alvin Toffler says, the illiterate of the 21st century are not those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And it's something that we have to be better at in order to build capacity in ourselves and our teams. And, you know, these are some ways of doing that. You know, we have to stay relevant. We have to seek opportunities and create opportunities, build a PLN, professional learning network. And that could be, you know, Twitter, it could be Facebook, it could be LinkedIn, it could be, you know, part of your groups, Michael, it could be a face-to-face PLN inside your school. It could be anything, but build one and engage in it and create and share, because that's where change happens. Because at the end of the day, people aren't going to hand this to you on a silver platter. You have to be motivated, and it starts with you. And, you know, one of the things I wanted to sort of, and this is very close to me sort of summing up and finishing up, but I wanted to share some of the things I do with schools as well. And part of that auditing process for leaders is think outside of the bubble of your school. You know, we all too often go, well, I've got someone that's interested in technology in my school. They could do it. But unfortunately, we don't see the flaws in what we've built. And we live in these silos and those ecosystems that have these, and education is rife with this. We have these cyclical things that become negative because we don't ask for external help. And external help in most schools, the work I do anyway, is auditing. How can I come in and say, this is what I see, and these are the things I think you should do? You don't need to engage with me long term. You've probably got internal expertise that can help that, but let me give you an overview of what I know works and what I know can help you move. Have to be willing to listen and learn, listen to your people, build strategy. It has to be pedagogy focused. Invest in those people, not in the tools. You know, build that community where people can share and feel comfortable and, you know, want to be involved in this change, and then invest in professional learning. It's a critical way to move us forward. I have a free podcast. I love sharing. I used to blog. My blog built up hundreds of thousands of views, and till I realized I hated writing with a passion. I hated sitting down and writing things, but I love to chat and talk. As you can tell from this, I'm passionate about sharing. So I wanted to create a free way to give back. Every Friday morning, Australian time, I launch a podcast. It's free. You can find it on any podcast channel by searching for Ignite EdTech podcast. It's a 20 to 30 minute podcast episode that talks about strategy. It talks about tips and advice. I share my favorite tool of the week that I've used or implemented. I interview someone from around the world in the tech space or education leadership space. And hopefully it's some learning that you can add to your pocket as you're walking, you're running, you're going to school, or you're making breakfast, or whatever it might be. Hopefully it adds value to you and your learning as well. And very quickly, EduSpark, if you're interested in learning more, I'd love to chat to you. This is a little bit of an overview of what we do and where we're going. We have learners, leaders of learning like Kath Murdoch inside of here, people from all over the world, huge base of educators and leaders from Australia, global landscape, demonstrating and leading learning synchronously and asynchronously. We now have communities of practice that allow to connect and engage. We have institutional landing pages that bring your school together, the ability to build your own courses and learning experiences inside of here, get accredited hours. We're now building out an evidence-based portfolio system and appraisal system that allows you to modulate and personalize the experience. We take data to the next level. I'd love to chat to you. If you're interested in transforming professional learning for yourself or your school, please reach out. My email is craig@eduspark.world. And I'd love to just have a conversation, not a sales pitch. That's not what we want to do. We're built by educators for educators. We're a small team. We're a startup. We don't have any investment from external companies. We're trying to make impact. We now have 4,000 learners from across the world with a focus on Asia Pacific right now. So if you're interested, let's chat. I'd love to work on ways of making that happen. Finally, Michael, I know we're coming to the end here. This is what I believe in. We're the last generation to understand life before the internet. The last generation as educators of what life was like before a smartphone. The last generation to understand how to connect without social media. The last generation to be fluent translators of what it was like before and now after technology. And for some of our teachers, this isn't even true, right? We've got young teachers coming in that grew up with technology. So we're starting to lose that understanding of before and after too. And I'm guilty of this as well, to wonder each morning what I should do instead of picking up my phone and looking at my notifications to see what I missed. And, I think back to, the way I used to engage with my friends. I'd jump on a bike and I'd bike down to their house, or I'd go across to the school and see who was playing cricket, and I'd go and play with them. I would pick up the phone and I'd call a mate to see what they were doing. If my mum or dad weren't on the internet, dial-up internet, and I got a screech in my ear. These things have changed and adapted so much that we have to plan with the future in mind. Our kids have to be in our mind of where they're going to in the future, not what we're doing now or have done in the past. And the reality is, if we don't stay up to date, we're going to get left behind. These are my contact details. I would love to connect and engage with you. There's so many ways for you to connect and engage. Find the channel of your choice, reach out. And when I say reach out, I truly mean reach out. I love connecting. I always reply. I always follow up. No matter where you will connect with me, I am happy to have a conversation, and I'm happy to always talk and share more. So, Michael, I'm going to stop there. I hope that was okay. I hope that people listening enjoyed learning and listening, and I hope that it adds value to what you and them are doing as well.
Thank you so much, Craig. I really did. I enjoyed your presentation, and I'm sure people who watch this will also feel the same way. It was very enlightening, and you raised many great points that we as educators should remember when planning to integrate technology into our learning environments. So thank you so much for your time today. And as Craig said, please reach out and connect with him. You'll find links to his profile, links to EduSpark and to Ignite EdTech with this video. So reach out and find out what Craig and his team can do for you today. Thank you so much, Craig.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.